Welcome to Charity Connect Podcast. This is a podcast that connects donors and donees, NGOs and volunteers, and publicizes charity works and events. My name is Shola Matthew, and I am your host. Alright guys, welcome. As you all know, my name is Shola Matthew, and you're welcome to Charity Connect Podcast. Alright, I want to say thank you all for always listening and downloading our podcast. Alright, in case you are listening to a downloaded podcast, you can go straight ahead into charityconnectpodcast.com and listen to our previous podcast. Thank you very, very much. I want to appreciate each and every one of you because recently we had a guest host on pause.ng on how to make a successful podcast in Nigeria. Pause.ng is a very popular blog in Nigeria, and here in this episode of the Charity Connect podcast, we're trying to help you on how to make podcasts in Nigeria and make money from it. So with this guide today, you're going to have a podcast of your own and also make money from it. Before we go right there, I want you to listen to these paid commercials.
Do you know that 7 out of every 10 Nigerian youths don't find reading interesting? Donate a book today to support the Change Begins with a Book campaign by the Vision Builders Network. Call +234 8138 365295.
Alright, you're welcome back. And today, let me just start with what a podcast is. A podcast simply is an audio file in episode which you can download from the internet. It's a digital audio, you understand? When we talk about digital audio, if I'm recording right now, it's still when I'm talking, that is an audio. But when it comes to digital, it's something that is actually on the internet. So when we talk about podcasts can simply be downloaded from the internet. So any digital audio in which you download from the internet and listen to, you understand, that is what we call a podcast. Examples of podcasts in which I have listened to is Audacity to Lead podcast, hosted by the popular Dio Samuel. There's also this Maverick LZ podcast. There's NGO podcast. There is Men's Today podcast, an international podcast, and more podcasts by which you can search on Google to listen to. So now, before we go forward, let me just tell you the difference between a podcast and a blog. Basically, podcast is designed for us to be able to listen to via the internet or with a mobile phone or an iPod, or an iPad. You simply listen to podcasts through all this media. Then blog is designed for you to read. We consume the contents of blog by reading them. Okay, now you can be listening to podcasts. For example, as you're listening to me speak to you right now, you can be listening to a podcast and still be doing some other works. It enables you to multitask. So another question a lot of people want to ask is, what exactly can I even podcast about? What I usually answer people with is, you can podcast about anything. You can podcast about anything. You can podcast about your passion. You can podcast about music. You can podcast about anything, but I usually advise people to podcast about something related to their passion. So what you help me do right now is this. Write 3 things you think you are passionate about. Alright, out of these 3 things, look at the one that can actually solve problems of people. Okay, you don't have to solve the whole of the problem of people in your locality. So you just look at it, one problem that you can solve. For example, in Charity Connect podcast, what we basically do is to connect donors and donees, NGOs and volunteers, and publicize charity works and events. That is so simple. You understand? There are some podcasts, for example, NGO podcast is actually made to publicize the works of NGO. So that is exactly what you're gonna podcast about. Just think about anything and podcast about it. Here you go. Go right there and start your podcast. So now again is, what tools do I need to podcast? As a beginner, what you need to start podcast is your smartphone. Yeah, you can be amazing what your smartphone can do. Alright, so all you need to do is just go ahead, download Parrot app. Yeah, download a Parrot app from your Play Store or from your mobile store. Download Parrot app or download Smart Voice Recorder. Either of the two is perfect for you to start with. Okay, so you download those things, then use them to to record. You can use any of the two, that is Parrot app or Smart Voice Recorder, to record a podcast like I'm doing right now. Although right now I'm using Audacity, you understand, it's a software on PC. Alright, so but then you can also record this on your mobile phone. So most times what I do is that I record on mobile phone, then transfer to a PC where I edit. But now, even if you don't have a PC, you can start a podcast right here where you are right now. So after downloading this application, for example, Smart Voice Recorder, all you need to do is just hit on the record button on your Smart Voice Recorder. Record whatever you want to say. For example, you can start by introducing yourself. My name is Shola Matthew, and you are welcome to Charity Connect Podcast. You understand? So when you do something like that, what you do is that you upload to the internet. You can create an account with SoundCloud.com, or you can create an account with Castbox.fm. Yeah, Castbox.fm. You can also create an account with MissCloud.com or Archive.com. These are all platforms that are free for you to host your podcast. So after uploading on the internet, all you do is you share with your friends on social media, on WhatsApp, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, so that your friends will be able to give you feedback. All right, so you use this feedback and use it to mold your next podcast. That is just a way to launch your podcast. So with that you'll be able to launch a podcast wherever you are in the world. Okay, now another question a lot of people ask me is, how can I make money from podcasts? Even though making money from your podcast shouldn't be your priority at this time, okay, although you can make money from your passion, but it shouldn't be your priority at this time. But I guarantee you that you can actually make money from your podcast. How do you do that? Through advertisement. Some people, after your podcast has started getting popular, some people will pay you for you to be able to put their advert on your podcast. This could be put in the middle or at the end of your podcast. Alright, then another thing is that you can do consultancy work. You can help people to build their podcast, you can consult for people, and so much more. Alright, this is just podcasting for beginners, and I hope that you'll be able to launch your podcast. I want you to comment on our videos on our website, charityconnectpodcast.com, and tell us how you feel about this simple tutorial on how to create your podcast. Alright, thank you for listening. My name still remains Shola Matthew. Have a lovely time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Charity Connect Podcast. You can like our Facebook page at Facebook.com/Charity Connect Podcast. Also, follow at Shola Matthew on Twitter and at Shola_Matthew on Instagram. See you on the next episode.